Hαίrε, and welcome. Today we are going to finish off our second page of the first paragraph of chapter 2 of the book of the Gospel of John, starting with verse 7, going through the end of verse 8. Let's go ahead and get started. Here is our rubric, everything that we're looking for as we go through the Greek. And now our text. Legei autois ho Jesus gemisate tas hudrias hudatos kai egemisan autas heos ano, kai lege autois ant le sate nun kai ferete toi architriklinoi hoi de eninkan. That was not easy to say. Our very first word is lege. We've already seen this before right there, so I don't need to parse it again. Just need to write down. Says, ho Jesus is our subject. We know because of ho from ho, he, to, nominative singular masculine. I don't need to parse that again. We've seen it multiple times before. Just to understand that he is our subject. Then we have autois as our next word. Omicron iota there tells us that this is going to be dative plural. It's either masculine or neuter. Now we want to take a look at who could possibly be the referent of this. Couldn't be the mother. There's only one of her. We have the disciples who were at the wedding. And we also have the diakonos, the helpers. Between the disciples and the helpers make the most sense because Jesus' mother was just speaking to them. So we're going to say masculine. And either whether or not it was the disciples, it would have been masculine anyway. To them, but they are closer than the disciples. Then we have direct discourse right here, so I'm going to add some quotation marks. Our very first word in that is also an imperative, gemisate. This tau epsilon here is going to be second person, and it is plural. And I believe this comes from gemidzo, so gemidzo, gemiso, egemisa, but since we have an imperative, that augmenting vowel epsilon doesn't appear on it. The augmenting vowel only appears in the indicative. But aorist, and it is active and indicative and means fill. And since it's aorist, it's going to be fill once. It's a one-time finished action, at least implied by the tense. Tas hudrias. Tas is accusative plural, feminine. If it were taste, then we would know the genitive, but since it's the alpha here from ho, he, to, we should know exactly what the case of this noun is. It's going to be feminine. Hudatos doesn't look like it has the same form, so tos is only with that. Hudatos has to have something else. It's not going to be an adjective modifying this. This, in fact, comes from hudor, hudatos, so os here. It actually is going to be our genitive singular form. And this is neuter. Oh, I forgot to write this down. The water jars, hudriai. Jars is not spelled with that letter. Hudatos means water. And I'm not sure what the name of the specific genitive that we have here, but probably specification is the word that we would use. I know that would what it would be in Latin. So of water, maybe with water. Fill the water jars with water. Period. And then we want to find a verb first before we know whether or not our direct discourse right here is finished. Kai just means and. Egemisan. Alpha nu is our verbal ending, so that's going to tell us that our direct discourse does end here because it's a different person than what we would expect. We'd expect a second person. But no, we have a third person, plural, and this comes from gemidzo. Gemidzo, gemiso, egemisa. We have our augmenting vowel there, so aorist. It's not going to be a special mood, just indicative. Active. I believe this one means the exact same thing as that. Gosh, failing. And they filled. autas. Autos, aute, auto is what this comes from, our demonstrative. Alpha, sigma here is going to be accusative plural and feminine. So we're referring back to hudrias, I should say them. And then we have heos ano. Now looking up either of these in the dictionary, I actually did go to both of their entries and I found the same entry right there. Together apparently they mean, especially with gamidzo, up to the brim, or just to the brim, as a special meaning. Alone, they would mean until and up or above. I suppose that to the brim is, yeah, it makes sense. Until above. Or until up. A bit weird. But to the brim is what we want. And that makes the most sense as we're working with jars. And that ends verse 7, so we can move on to verse 8. Kai means and. Lege we've parsed a bazillion times before. Autois we've seen before, so it's right there. Bring that down to them. We're going to want to bring in a subject since we've got autois and autois. Jesus is probably our subject, so I'm going to put he right here. And he says to them, another direct discourse. Antlesate is another verb. Ate, as we've seen before, is second person plural. And I can't remember the principal parts of this one, but eta sigma there should indicate to us that this is aorist again, from a contract verb. And it is active, imperative. Oops. Imperative. Yikes. This one means draw. And normally the implication is draw water. This is how this is used according to the dictionary. So I'm going to put that in parentheses. Noon tells us time. It's adverb. It means now. I'll be modifying that one. Draw now. Kai. And then we have our next word. Ferete. Tell. Epsilon here again is the same form. Because this is from pharaoh. Oiso and ninkan. Something like that. This is actually going to be a present tense imperative. Second plural present. Almost wrote indicative again. And carry. So since we've got the aorist here, we've got the present here, this would imply draw once, and present would imply carry and continue carrying. But together those two don't make much sense. So if you, and I'm not sure that I made this very clear previously, when we have these aorists for words like this, participles or imperatives, it can imply completed one-time action, and present can imply present ongoing action, but it doesn't always have to. And that might be what we have going on here. That I don't know really how we would tell for certain. But just so you're aware. Moving on. And carry, then we would want a direct object to be carried. We don't necessarily have to have it appear. And as we take a look at this, there is no direct object before our colon. But we do find toi architriklino, however you say that, an indirect object, because the sub-iota tells us, square bracket, dative. And it is singular, and this is a masculine noun. And looking up this one, there are a larger variety of meanings than, say, diakonos. This one has the primary meanings of butler, or head waiter, and the dictionary was non-committal about this next one. It said it could be toastmaster. Or master of the feast. But the dictionary wasn't willing to be quite 100% on that. Just so you're aware, these two, butler and head waiter, are the normal uses. Toastmaster, master of the feast, possibly, and I think that's only based on this passage. Only because of this passage is that considered. But ark is from arco, to rule, to reign, to have authority over. And triclino, I can't remember. That sounds like the word for kitchen or dining room or something. But I could be wrong. So ark, ruler, if I'm correct, ruler of dining room. Butler or head waiter makes sense. Master of the feast, if it's at a party, that would also make sense. But there we go, that word. Let's move on and finish off this page. Hoi de einen kan. We have alpha nu off of this verb, so we know that's going to be third person, and it is plural. This comes from the same verb as pharaoh. It's just actually, technically, it comes from a different verb, but we put them together in our dictionaries, pharaoh, oiso, and enenkan, because the aorist forms of pharaoh disappeared and the present forms of this one disappeared, and so they were used with each other instead. They're not technically the same verb. Moving on. Aorist tense, active and indicative. Hoi is from hoheto. This is nominative plural, masculine. And since diakonos, the reference to them are much closer than disciples, this most likely refers to them. Since we don't have a noun, we're going to have to insert, well, we're going to have to not really insert, but understand something, and that would be understand this in the Homeric use. Articles back during the Homeric time were frequently used as pronouns. Not so much in classical Greek, or at least as far as I'm aware, in Koine Greek, but I think this will be the second time we've seen this. We would call this a substantive use. I'm going to write that up there. Substantive. They. Day, meaning but or and. I think, let's go with and this time. And nenkan from pharaoh, carried. Period. So everything that we've done so far, in its own context, is the Jesus says to them, fill the water jars with water, and they filled them to the brim. And he says to them, draw now and carry to the butler. And they carried. And that's as far as we went today. Let's take a look at it in its greater context from verse 1. And on the day, the third one, wedding happened in Cana of Galilee. And the mother of the Jesus was there. But the Jesus also was invited, and the disciples of him, into the wedding. And since wine gave out, the mother of the Jesus says to him, they do not have wine. And the Jesus says to her, what to me and to you, woman? The hour of me is not yet come. The mother of him says to the helpers, whatever he says to you all, do. There were there 6 stone water jars, to the purification of the Jews, standing there, holding each 2 or 3 measures. The Jesus says to them, fill the water jars with water, and they filled them to the brim. And he says to them, draw now and carry to the butler. And they carried. On that note, we're done. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope taking a look at this has been helpful for you. I'm sorry that I ramble on so much and draw these things out. Sorry also for all the mistakes I make, but thank you for putting up with me. I hope that you continue to join me as we move into the second half of this paragraph and further on into chapter 2. Have a good day. Hey, not asleep yet? That's okay. I've got tons of other equally sleep-inducing videos for you to watch. Check them out.